As we are entering the holiday season and then going right into the new year, I know that I personally am trying to figure out how to clear some of the clutter in my home that is quite honestly super overwhelming to me. And I know that so many other moms can relate to this. So today we will be talking about decluttering for simplicity, all with a lens of self-compassion, because if you are anything like me, this is not an easy conversation to have. Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of two on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. So I am super picky about the conversations that I bring here to Worthy Mother Podcast, and decluttering our spaces is sometimes a conversation that I don't even want to touch with a 10-foot pole because oftentimes I find that conversations about decluttering and creating an ideal space can really just perpetuate ideas of perfectionism and create a lot of pressure for moms that this is your problem, you need to deal with it, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. We don't need more things adding shame and pressure to our lives, including this need for having a tidy home. However, I do think that it is extremely valuable to discuss like how can we simplify our spaces because it does have such an impact when we can live more clutter-free. And so today's guest, Courtney Florey, she shares a lot of the same values that I do when it comes to understanding those societal expectations and pressures on moms. And that informs the work that she does helping moms simplify their homes. Courtney is a military wife, a mom, and a decluttering coach who aims to help make the often emotionally exhausting process of decluttering feel actually doable. So, Courtney, welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. Can you just tell us a little bit about you and your family and the work you do?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Emily. So I am a toddler mom to a very rambunctious little boy. And we just recently moved to Hawaii in July, and we have been just loving getting to spend time outside, really just enjoy the island life. My approach to decluttering is really simple, and I just love getting to help moms make visible progress in their homes without having to sacrifice what little free time that they have to really create a space that feels calm and simple. Because I know that that has really impacted my life, especially the time that I have as a mom.
Yeah, it is such an impactful thing to have a calm space. Like it impacts us and the overwhelm we feel, and also our kids. And then there's that cycle of like when they're less overwhelmed and overstimulated by things, they're not overwhelming and overstimulating us. And, it's a great thing. But I know for so many people, including myself, like the how behind that is really challenging. And there's so many factors to it. So I think this is going to be really helpful for anyone, especially right now as we are entering the holiday season. I know for me, like we have a lot of stuff and I anticipate that we will be getting more stuff, right? And so it's a really good time to be having this conversation. Before we jump into talking about like how we do this decluttering, I want to talk about the why behind decluttering because again, I perceive that there can be a lot of shame when it comes to having a cluttered home. I know that I feel that. And I strongly believe that we don't want to come from a place of shame to make change. But there's real benefits to decluttering, and I would love to hear your thoughts on why we should focus on this.
Yeah, so I think a lot of moms believe that a messy or a cluttered house means they're a bad mom, or they're failing as a mom, or they're not doing enough, or not doing the right thing, or make them look like a bad mom if somebody stops by or someone comes over and sees the house in disarray. And, it's just not true, right? I think we have to look at, and sometimes it's hard to, or we don't even know we're believing these things, but we have to look at the lies that we're believing about ourselves and kind of look at where they're coming from. I think there's a lot to this, but I know social media plays a huge role in this because we live in this era where we see what everybody is doing or seemingly doing, what they're sharing, right? And we have to remember what they're choosing to share. We see what's in their houses now because people are recording inside or showing their homes. Again, we have to remember that people are very selective about what they post online. I mean, they're making the choice, right? We're not seeing often the super messy kitchen, we're seeing usually the really clean aftermath, which is fine. But we have to, I think it gives us perspective when we're online, remembering we're not seeing 100% of the pie. We're seeing a little slice. And I know it helps me when I go online and see certain things. It kind of helps me to take a step back and remember I'm not the only one who doesn't have this or who's struggling with this, right?
Mhm.
And I think when we see what seems like everybody else who has a clean home or who has this, and we look at our house and we're like, oh my gosh, my house looks nothing like hers. It can trigger these feelings of guilt or shame within us if we feel like our house looks quote unquote way worse than somebody else's. We start to feel left out, less than, like we aren't doing enough, when in fact, mama, like you're doing plenty, right? That's not what it's about at all. And so I think just taking a step back and remembering this is not everybody's reality. And it's also okay to be in the messy middle. We usually see the end result, right? But it's okay to be in the middle and start to make steps towards creating a simpler home that works for you, which will look unique for you as well.
Yeah, when you're saying all of that, I had this memory pop into my head. I follow the Birds Papaya on Instagram. Do you follow her, Sarah Nicole Landry? And I remember, I mean, probably 4 years ago at this point, on her story, she at one point was like filming something and then went around the corner of the island or peninsula in the kitchen and showed all the stuff shoved behind where you couldn't see the stuff, but it was there out of the frame.
Yes.
And I know for me, like when I'm trying to clean up the living room, a lot of times stuff gets shoved in the spare bedroom, things like that. It's like to create this image of tidiness, this image of I have my shit together. And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes that's not necessarily the all the time, or it's not necessarily what the whole house looks like. It's just the frame or the room that you're having the people in. And that is such an important reminder because it kind of leads us then to like, what is the goal of decluttering? Are we trying to establish the perfect put together tidy home where the kids don't make a mess or something else? I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on that. Like, what is the goal?
Yeah. So for me, the goal of decluttering is to create a calmer home, one that makes you feel good. It makes you feel cozy. It makes you feel at peace. Oh my gosh, we all want that, right? Like some inner peace would be great in motherhood, right? The chance to be able to sit on the couch, guilt-free, kick your feet up and not have to look around and see the piles and see the stuff on the stairs that you need to take and the baskets that you need, because that is just a constant reminder. I know it is for me when I see it that, oh, I have more to do. I'm not done. And so I don't really feel like I can rest until that, like truly rest, right? Check out, turn on a show, read a book, like just, you know, kind of lose my mind in whatever, a book or whatever it is until I know those things are done. And I know when I see those things, it's like, just, you're not done. You have more to do. So I found that it also gives me more capacity in life for the things that I want because, nobody wants to spend hours cleaning up or trying to get organized. And so I just found that fewer things in my home is less to deal with, less to trip over, less to nag my husband or bug my kids about, or spend hours trying to organize. I have more space to breathe and think, and I have a lot more mental clarity, which I know we all want as moms. I've also found that decluttering my home and what I like to call putting my stuff in its place, which I guess now that I'm saying this out loud, it sounds like two different things. Yeah, putting the things away, but more like putting it in its rightful place as far as prioritizing it. Like, my stuff or having a lot of stuff is not top priority for me. It would be my family or, whatever else. And that's helped me to live a more content life because I'm grateful for what I have. I'm mindful about the things that I'm keeping in my home instead of constantly chasing after things that I don't, right? Yes, things are nice. We use things, we need things in life, but I'm not obsessive about it to the point where it consumes my life, or I have so much stuff where I feel like it's controlling me versus the other way around.
It's such a huge problem, I think, especially these days with like the fact that you can go on TikTok and be influenced and buy something like on the app to have in your home. Like we are so influenced to have stuff. Like I mean, just
Yeah.
inevitably. And there's no shame in that. Like that's just the way of the world right now. But being mindful that then you're just not necessarily being mindful about what you're bringing into your home and you're bringing more stuff in that then you have to give a place and you have to put in its place and deal with and manage. When you have a lot of stuff, you have a lot of stuff to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you find that moms who are trying to start a process of decluttering get hung up? Like, is it a mindset thing? Is it getting started, finishing what they started, knowing what the goal is? Like, what's up?
Yeah, so I see a few different hangups. One of them is huge, and it's just getting past the point of paralyzation and sometimes often avoidance, right? Because you're like, ooh, this is, okay, this is scary, this is overwhelming, this is a lot of work. I'm already, like we mentioned, emotionally exhausted. Like I don't have capacity for this right now. And so it's getting past that point and just deciding I'm ready to start. Like that, it takes a lot, right? To finally get there and say, I'm ready to do it.
Hmm.
Because I think for a lot of us, like we know, oh, I really need to go through that closet, or oh, it's been on my to-do list for months now, but it's just not usually top priority. And I mean, the more I work with clients and talk with moms, like I'm finding that's pretty normal. And so it's okay. Like it doesn't have to be top priority because a lot of the time, like it's important, of course, and there's all these benefits. And hello, I'm a decluttering coach. So of course I believe it's valuable, but I know in life there's a million other things that usually come to the top,
Yeah.
right? So when you're drowning and you're overwhelmed and your brain feels jumbled, it can be hard to prioritize tasks or even feel motivated to start. And sometimes you have to start even if you don't feel like it. I know I get caught up in my feels too sometimes, and I'm like, I'm just not, but I think when we can picture what we want for our homes and not just what it looks like. Yeah, that's a benefit and that's great. But what we will feel like in our homes, are we going to feel more calm? Maybe
Hmm.
we're not going to feel like enraged all the time because all we ever, we're overstimulated and we're just like at our wits' end, but maybe we'll be able to breathe again. We'll have time for other things that we want to do. When we can think about that, it can help to motivate us to take those first steps to start. And the other thing I see is sometimes people will focus on the wrong thing,
Hmm.
organizing instead of
Yeah.
decluttering first. Now, there's a time and place for organizing, but I believe that comes after decluttering. And I've seen this happen because, well, first of all, organizing is talked about. I don't know if I would say, I mean, I don't know. Decluttering has definitely become more prevalent now, but for a while it was all about organizing, right? I mean, there's shows, there's books, there's all the things about it. Everything looks so beautiful, color coded, and all the shelves and whatever. And I think that's great. But when you are drowning in stuff, and the first thing you do is, first of all, go out and buy more stuff to hold your stuff, right? But you're going out, you're spending money, baskets, bins, all the things to make it look really pretty, but you don't get rid of anything and you have kids. What happens when little Johnny dumps the bin out, 2 seconds after you've put stuff away? We've all been
Hmm.
there. Or you need to find something, and so you have to rummage through because there's so much stuff in the bin and you can't find what you need, right? You're still left with your problem, which is clutter. So instead of going first to how can I put a band-aid over the clutter, I want us to dig a little deeper and actually make some decisions to get rid of some things because like we talked about earlier, fewer things, less to manage, less to trip over, all the things. I know it can be and sound really appealing to want to organize. I think I mean, that sounds more fun than decluttering because oh, I get to go out and shop. I get to buy these cute baskets, right? My home's going to look so great. But we've got to do the hard work of decluttering. And then if you want to organize after, that's fine. But it'll be easier and you'll probably have to spend less money because you won't need as many, containers and things to hold all of your stuff because you won't have as much.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying, and it's like, yeah, duh. I mean, like, how many times have I tried to organize things and there's not a spot for it? So
Yeah.
just doesn't really work. And you try and buy the bins, and then exactly what you said, it gets dumped out. It's like the story of what happens when you try this. You put all this effort into the organization and it doesn't work, and how defeating that can feel. Something that is coming forward for me is just the emotional exhaustion of decluttering, and how I think especially with kids, it can feel like, well, what am I supposed to like get rid of? What about the sentimental value of things, or the fact that like they don't play with it that often, but what if like they ask for it? And whatever it is, there's a lot of like emotional labor that can go into it. And I know for so many moms, we're already dealing with a lot of emotional labor. So I'm wondering how you suggest kind of managing that emotional exhaustion.
Yeah, so I want you to give yourself permission as you start decluttering to start small. Because I think so many women have experienced this moment at least once in their life. They're fired up. They've decided, right, after months, years, how, whatever the time span is, they've decided, I'm ready to do it. And at that point, like, they're ready to go. They want the whole house decluttered in a week, and that's very unrealistic. And I just want to say it's okay. Nobody's doing that. I know we see these before and afters. We want this big transformation, and you will get there. But we've got to take it small because we want it to be doable and manageable. But I realized I cut myself off. So we've all experienced this moment when we're fired up, we're ready to go. We're in our closet, right? Or maybe we're just rage cleaning because we're like, I'm done, right? Nothing fits, or I can't find anything to wear. And we're like, I'm decluttering. And so, we pull everything off the hangers, everything comes off the shelves, and then we're sitting on the floor. We're scrolling reels or doing something, and we haven't gotten rid of everything, but all the clothes are on the floor around us. And we're like, okay, well, this is exhausting. I'm done. Nothing's happened, but like now I'm overwhelmed. So I kind of regret doing this. And, why did I even do this? And this happens because, we bite off more than we can chew. Well-intentioned, right? We're ready to go, but we've just overwhelmed ourselves. So it doesn't mean you can't handle it. It's just a lot of decisions to make. It's like you said, I mean, we're already emotionally exhausted from the day. And then we start decluttering and it's like, oh my gosh, there's even more to do, more decisions to make. So instead of trying to do it all at once, I want to encourage you to start with just one section of your closet. So maybe it's your sock and underwear drawer. That is an easy place, right? Super simple to start. It should be a quick thing. Then you can work up to, let's say, your pajama drawer. Start with things that feel simple, and just know working in these smaller chunks will help you make more progress because you're actually going to start and complete the task. And, it will give you a little dopamine boost. It will. And boost your motivation to keep going. And if you're believing the lie that you can't do this, or you're just a messy person, it's just how it is, or, whatever it is, doing it will physically show you that you can. And that's what I love about decluttering, is that you do see that visible progress.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things in life that we don't see the visible progress right away. Like, for example, weight loss. We don't go walk for 15 minutes or work out for 15 minutes and then, okay, the pounds are just falling off, right? But in our closet, we can declutter for 15 minutes and we can visibly see, oh, wow, I've gotten rid of X amount of shirts. I can move, I can come in here. I'm not tripping over things. Like, it is very rewarding. And I have seen in my life and in clients' lives that that is the thing that really helps them move the needle. Just taking the pressure off and knowing you can start small.
I feel called out by what you said in the best way, because the way you explained that, of like how people tend to get started with that, like, I'm doing this, and then it's way too hard to do that, to just go for it. It doesn't work. And you end up shoving the stuff that you took off the hangers back into a pile in the closet because you don't have the energy anymore to do anything with it. And I hope other people listening who also have experienced that before feel called out in that way, of like, not a call out of like, this is a bad thing, but of a, this is normal. Courtney just said it. She
Yeah.
just explained exactly what I've experienced, which means it's probably something she's seen, not from me, but from someone else. So
Yeah.
there's no shame in that. But I can also use that to recognize, okay, obviously that's not the best way to do this. And I love that shift of, if you start small, you can still see the progress and you can see it in bigger ways, because the drawer is now tidy and organized, and you can find all your stuff without digging through it. And your closet, that one part of your closet with the shirts hanging up, now there's space to like put your laundry away more easily. And how, if we can recognize that as a reason to start small, how impactful that is, I think that's a really important thing to take away. Because again, that's not the way we usually jump into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your suggestion for involving the kids in the process or not involving them? Because I know for me, that's something that I get hung up on a lot is like, it doesn't really work that well to get them super involved. But then also sometimes I'm like, I should. I don't know. What's your opinion?
Well, I have a question for you. Do you find that if you, declutter their toys or get rid of things, like, did they ask you about them or are they upset about it or do they even notice?
I mean, like usually they don't notice. I mean, there's stuff like
Okay.
that was put in the garage to make space for putting down new floors, and
Yeah.
it's not stuff to get rid of, but I'm like, it's been in the garage for like 4 months and they've never noticed it's gone. So probably like they probably wouldn't notice.
Okay. Well, I feel like, okay, so in that scenario, I feel like, hey, go ahead. Of course you would want to
Yeah.
model, it's something we want to teach our kids and model and like invite them to be a part of. But if, for those listening, if you have kids who are like, oh, not really into it, but like, you know, I think that's fine. And they're not upset, then I would say, like, by all means, go ahead. That's kind of nice because I know there are also families where the child, is sentimental and wants to keep like every little thing or has some pushback. And I mean, in those situations, I really don't have any like specific advice because every kid's different, every family's different, right? And I think you as the parent have to decide at that point, okay, like, are you completely drowning in stuff? Can you
Hmm.
walk in the room? Is it like, okay, no, this is a safety issue or this is really like out of hand? Okay, then maybe talk with your spouse and decide what you can do, right? But if your child is old enough to understand and be a part of it, or they're young, they're, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, and they're excited about these things and like they want to help mom, I would invite them into the process and talk about why you're doing this. And you can share, well, before Christmas, we're going to make room for the new toys you're going to get. We don't want, this room to be overwhelming or, however they can understand it. So we're going to pass some on. Or you can also say, hey, we're getting rid of some things. So cleanup is easier on you, on mom, on, whoever's doing it, right? I mean, hey, you can talk about that. Like, how you're always kind of complaining about cleaning up, or how it's kind of a lot of work. Well, if we get rid of some things, then it'll be a little easier. And it's also a great time, not even just around the holidays, but anytime to talk about, taking care of what we have, passing on what we aren't using anymore, and giving back to the local community, donating to the church, to, wherever it is that you can pass toys on. Often kids love to be a part of that and even specifically pick out, certain toys. I'm not playing with this doll anymore, but I would love to give this to, a child or whatever organization, and then they can be a part of that. Bring them with you to the, charity or donation center and make it something really sweet. And that is also teaching them about being generous. And I think it can be a really sweet thing. It doesn't have to be just like, okay, we're just throwing your toys away, right? Where
Hmm.
it's always so dark and negative, but it can be a positive thing too.
I love that. And I feel like there's room there for like both, right? There's room
Yeah.
for like the stuff that I know they're not going to care about, I'm just going to get rid of. But then also
Yes.
involving them in that process is so positive. We had some like learning toy that someone gave us. It was like a patterning screw thing from Lakeshore Learning, I think is the brand that's like, it's for educational purposes. And it's something that my kids played with a few times and like couldn't care less about. And I had asked both of them, would you guys want to donate this to the preschool where my youngest goes? I'm like, I feel like this would be a really fun toy for the kids there. And they were like, yeah, that's such a good idea. And then we saw it when I dropped my son off the other day. It was out and the
Oh,
kids were playing with it. And it was like an exciting thing. And like, I'm going to take that of like, it can be both. I can
yeah.
involve them in the conversation in the process for the things that like it makes sense to involve them in. And then also, they don't have to be involved in the whole thing because realistically, that's going to add a whole lot more emotional exhaustion to my plate when I'm trying to manage. Like, no, you
Yes.
haven't seen this thing in 5 months. Why are you
Right.
saying you really love it?
Yeah.
So, totally taking that. Do you have any tips on specifically around the holidays decluttering? Because I know obviously, like this is a process if you're really trying to declutter your space in a real sustainable way. But we're coming up on Christmas, and the reality is that a lot of times that means more stuff. So, just any tips for that?
Yeah, I know life can get busy this time of year. It's like we already have so much going on, and often it's hard to even think about decluttering. But if you can prioritize some time, there are two areas, spaces that I would encourage you to declutter. And when I say space, I'm saying, like we talked about earlier, go in, maybe it's one drawer, like pick either a finite space, one drawer, one cabinet, or set a 10, 15 minutes and do it, one day, okay? And it doesn't even have to be the next day that you're doing it again, because a lot of the time it's not this like, okay, every day I'm doing, maybe it's a couple days, whatever it looks like, right? But these two spaces, pick somewhere within there that you can kind of work to just simplify what you can. Kids, toys, and books. I know it's a big one, but like we've mentioned, they're going to get more for Christmas. And even having a certain space cleared out or X amount of, fewer toys or having the book simplified, like that'll make a big difference come December 25th, morning of when they're opening all these gifts. And then you're looking to, okay, where are we going to put them away? Where are we going to put these things? Right. It will make an impact. So even if you only have a limited amount of time, it is still worth it to do a little bit. And then also, especially if you're cooking or hosting this year or just having guests over, some spaces in the kitchen would be a great place to start too. Again, it's not the whole kitchen, but maybe your utensil drawer. I mean, that's a simple thing, right? But hey, maybe you find that, maybe I don't need 7 spatulas. Maybe I could, downsize to 2 or 3. Okay, awesome. Maybe it's the fridge. Also a great place to start and also an easy one if you're looking for kind of a quick win. And then if you're up for a challenge, maybe work up towards your mug collection. I know this can be a tough one for some, but hey, you never know. Could be nice to simplify it.
I love that. As you're saying that, I'm like, okay, I have a goal in my head because I have like cutting boards on the counter and I want to clear the space that they're on the counter and put them in a drawer and combine my two not utensil, but like kitchen gadget drawers into
Yeah.
one. And it's been on my mind. And I think after this, I'm gonna go do it and capture it so that when this episode comes out, I will share that with all of you, holding myself accountable. I'm gonna declutter that drawer. And I honestly think it's gonna take like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There's probably very obvious things in there that I really don't need.
Yeah.
Just got to look at it. That is great advice. And I think, yeah, just knowing that that prioritizing decluttering those spaces before we get an influx of new stuff is worth it. It's worth it for sure. It might be challenging to think about, but the benefits probably outweigh that.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been like so full of so much actionable advice. And I love that. And also like grace and compassion because we know that this process is not necessarily easy for most of us. So we're going to wrap things up. And one thing that I love asking guests at the end of the episode is about self care. I'm a huge believer that moms taking care of themselves is one of the most important things because we give so much to others and we really do deserve to prioritize our own needs. So I'd love to ask you how you take care of yourself and if you have any tips for moms just to make sure that they are also caring for themselves regularly.
Yeah. So I feel taken care of or recharged even when I am doing something for myself. Now, I know that sounds like just so general, like, what do you mean? But I mean, when I get to choose the thing, like, it doesn't matter what it is, really. I mean, I have different things that I like to do. I like to go outside, move my body, spend time outdoors, especially in Hawaii. It's beautiful, right? It's easy to do. I like to read for enjoyment, not for work. Years ago, I used to read, I would only read nonfiction. Oh, this was actually a while ago because it was only to like learn or to grow this or, personal development. And now, more often than not, I'm reading fiction because I'm reading for fun. Like that is my checking out into a book, right? So I have those things, but as I'm thinking about it, it's really when I get to choose, okay, I'm going to sit down and watch a show, or I'm going to stay up a little bit later because I get to, like, literally because I get to choose what I'm doing with this time that I have in the evening. Because for the majority of the day, I mean, yeah, I get to choose, but also I have like a little toddler who, usually dictates a lot of the day. And so, yeah, I just find that having that choice, I guess, or the freedom, um, helps when, most of the day I'm taking care of my family, right?
Yeah, no, totally. It is like choosing to tune into that too, of like, this is something I'm choosing to do, and how that even just that mindset of like, I'm choosing to read a book right now, or I'm choosing to sit and watch TV and stay up late because like that's what I want to do. How recognizing that, having the awareness of that being something that's caring for yourself can kind of amplify the impact of that.
Yeah, and something else that I found too is I've been thinking about is how closely that my son is watching me. And I know, okay, taking care of myself benefits me, but I know it benefits him too, because when I feel fulfilled because I've done something that lights me up, or more energized because I've had time to rest or do something that I enjoy, I know that I can show up as a better mom for him, which of course is like a driving factor, right? As moms, we're always like, how can we do better for our family? And it's great because it benefits everybody, right? And I also think it's showing him like mom is finding things that she enjoys. And I hope that encourages him as he grows up to, take time to rest and slow down and find the things that he likes to do too.
Yeah, they're watching and they're learning, and they are learning about the world and the way that they exist in the world by how we are choosing to show up for ourselves in the world. Courtney, you are like such a great source when it comes to all things decluttering for moms and simplifying life, cutting the overwhelm. Where can listeners find you, and is there anything that they should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so you can connect with me over on Instagram at Declutter and Dwell. I also have the Simple Life Starter Kit, which you can download. It is a 4-page guide that will help you take those first steps, get those little quick wins, and start the decluttering process. It has 10-minute different decluttering tasks that you can do and knock out to help you simplify your house.
I love that. Sounds like a great way to get started without having to do a lot of like mental work to figure out where and how.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Courtney, for being here and just sharing with us in such, again, a compassionate way. I think it's really important to address the things that can cause shame when it comes to our messy homes. And I just really appreciate everything that you brought to this conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Emily.
Yeah. Everybody listening, I hope that this has given you maybe an action step to take, or just a way to give yourself more grace when it does come to the fact that things might be a little bit of a mess now and then, or a lot of the time. That's okay. And also, there is a way forward that can actually be done, right? There's a way forward that is manageable. With that, have a great rest of your week. You are worthy, Mama.